Did you see that recent one that Lawrence Taylor drove by Giant Stadium? You saw the lights on and he was like, oh, fuck, I have a game.
Yeah.
And showed up in the first quarter.
He showed up late. They benched him for a series, and then he went out, and I think he had like 7 sacks.
All right, I'm going to tell a story, okay? I don't feel like I'm talking out of school here because this is a funny story. So I'm doing Inside the NFL. Phil Simms is on the show, and Lawrence Taylor is coming in. So it's Phil, Chris Collinsworth, Lawrence Taylor, and me, right? I mean, one of those classic, like, what in the hell am I doing here, right? So Lawrence hasn't showed up yet. So Phil tells me a story. I go, I can't believe Lawrence Taylor's going to be here. I mean, that guy he's just, like, he literally changed the game. And I was just going on and on about him. He goes, you know what's funny about that guy? He goes, he didn't even know the names of the teams in the leagues. I go, get the fuck out of here. He goes, yeah. He goes, one time, he goes, we won some game. They were on the road, and they're on the team playing. They're all hyped. And Lawrence is psyched, and Phil goes, yeah, hey, man, if the Redskins lose, then we're going to be in first place in our division. And Lawrence goes, oh, yeah? He goes, who's in our division? And Phil goes, you don't know who's in our division? And he goes, man, I don't give a shit, right? And I'm thinking, like, that is the genius
that he
of
was.
him. Let's say, I don't need extra information in my head. You have a different uniform than me. I'm going to ruin your day. So I thought it was a hilarious story. But as always, you think maybe put a little mustard on it or whatever. 10 minutes later, Lawrence Taylor comes walking in. Him and Phil both just start laughing, which was great. They just saw each other. They started laughing. They hugged and everything. You just know all the shit that they did back then. Who knows, right? So Lawrence sits down and he starts telling stories, right? They just start telling things. And in the middle of one story, he goes, we were down in New Orleans and we were playing and he goes, Phil, what's the name of that team in New Orleans? And he goes, the Saints. He goes, we're playing the Saints. It was unbelievable. And then fat sports writers would say that, they would say that he wasn't smart, he was blah, blah. It's like, that's like some Einstein shit. I'm wearing the same shit every day, so my brain I only need to worry about, like, you hear all those stories, how he would sleep through meetings and then get up and diagram the whole play, or they would ask him if it was okay. The guy is like a fucking
savant.
Genius. But the fact that he didn't even know, like the fact that he's almost like a housewife in the level that he doesn't know the names of the teams, yet he's the most alpha dominating player that I ever saw. But you know why he seems like he fell out of the sky is because his favorite player was Hollywood Henderson.
Yeah.
And he was like, Hollywood Henderson was the gap as far as the linebacking position between, like, Dick Butkus in that era and him. He came and it looked like he was an alien. It was because, unfortunately, Hollywood Henderson had, like, substance abuse problems and it affected his career. But one of the greatest another underrated play, 1976, the Steelers are playing the Cowboys, and the Steelers kick off. Guess who receives it? Hollywood Henderson. They had a linebacker receiving their kick in 1976. Like, that just didn't happen. And he took it all the way down the field to, like, their 45, and Roy Jarella, their kicker, just sort of dove like that, and his linebacker knee hit his ribs.
Broke him.
Yeah, and fucked him up for the game. And it's a really hard game to watch if you're a Cowboys fan because they were running reverses. I think that's what it was. It was a reverse on the kickoff, and they were doing all of this shit. And then they got up, and then they just sat on the ball, and the Steelers kept playing, and then they came back and beat them.
Man, how does it feel to be that old to remember a 1976 game that great?
I watched it on YouTube. The first one I watched was 78.
What's the first game you remember watching? Do you know?
Some O.J. Simpson was playing in, like, the early 70s.
Buffalo.
And my dad screaming at the TV. Or something. My grandfather going, these are the old days. He's, like, packing a pipe to smoke it inside.
Was he Sherlock Holmes? Fucking
No,
pipe.
old men smoked pipe. And I got to be honest with you. Both my grandfathers smoked pipes. And to this day, if I smell pipe smoke, it puts me in, like, the greatest mood because both my grandfathers were these amazing, like, guys. Yeah, so that was probably the first one. But I've also, like, gone back and, like, I've watched all of this history of the NFL, and I'll tell you, a great guy, and he just passed away, unfortunately, and the NFL never gave him his due, was this guy Marlon Briscoe. he played for the Broncos, black quarterback. They drafted him. He was like second or third string or something like that, and both white quarterbacks go down. This is like the late 60s, and he goes in, and you immediately see the modern-day NFL. It wasn't just standing there throwing like that. He was all over the field. More Randall Cunningham, I would say, than Michael Vick. And he won like 6 of the last 7 games, something crazy. And then, they didn't make the playoffs because they were having a bad season before he got in there. And then the next season, the team just drafted another high-ranked white guy, and they shipped him off to Buffalo, and he finished his career as a wide receiver.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like the 60s.
Well, this is what the 60s. It sounded like right through the 90s, I feel.
Yeah, I guess.
So that's what, this is like all of this shit that it was so fucked up is I can remember all of that stuff. And I think because I looked at the football cards and I remember all the names. And then I also went back and I was fascinated, like what happened right before I started watching football. And then today's game, like, you age out as a player. I also feel you can age out as a fan.
Mm.
And like how certain teams, like they sort of aged out during like free agency because their whole thing was the draft and their scouts. And then when the game became more free agency, they didn't adjust. I would say as a fan, the fan version of that is I didn't get involved in fantasy football.
Yeah.
So now I don't know the player's name. I don't know what's going on. And then, like, I also feel like they kind of sold their souls, all professional sports, for offense because they had reached maximum density with sports fans, and then offense gets the casual fan.
Sells the tickets. Defense
Yeah, and
wins the
I think that they are envious of the UFC to see them start so much later than them, but then go global. But there's something about soccer, football, whatever, and fighting. It just transcends all borders and all that, which I find like really fascinating. Not fighting, because fighting, it's like I remember Joe Rogan telling this story, saying like, if you're driving down the street and there's 2 people playing, catch or whatever, playing base, you're not going to really watch but if you drive down the street and you see a fight, like you got to watch it. And it was sort of like this really,
It's true.
yeah, easy way of explaining how their thing got as big as it did. And I don't know what it is about soccer, but everybody seems to enjoy it.
Because all you need is a ball, kick it, banana
But you
leaves.
could say that about hoop. I guess you need a basketball.
But
in that.
basketball is also very global.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, your point about like how football's kind of changed and evolved and sold its soul for offense is a conversation we have behind the scenes on this show a lot because we go watch 85 game. We watch a game from the early 2000s and the game is so different.
Oh, yeah. You don't even want to hear my conspiracy theory. Like my conspiracy theory right now is the NFL's in a bad place because they only have one great quarterback. True, as far as like there's always been Brady Manning, what
about
Elway, Marino,
So
Montana,
who's your one great
Staubach.
quarterback?
So
Mahomes.
Mahomes is the guy that sells the tickets. I'm not saying there's not like great talent at that position, but nobody has put up sort of like he doesn't have his Hatfield and McCoy guy.
No.
So it's sort of the only storyline they have right now is can he three-peat? So that's why like the ridiculous. That guy took his helmet off from the fucking end zone. The ref says put it back on. I mean, it's just like. He's like, you realize this is televised, right? Like, what are we doing here? So,
That's a penalty. It's supposed to be a penalty. Take your helmet off. It's 15.